palms and repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
Keeping the palms joined. Palms down. So we had about probably 40 people here at 8 a.m. this morning to sit and do absolutely nothing for a while. So this is the late crowd. You all slept in. Smarter than they are, I guess, right? And about half of that crowd was the college group that actually chose to be here. What I mean by that is we have a pledge program we run where they're on a pretty strict schedule and they have to go. And then we have the active chapter and they schedule retreats and go and do things that they want. And I think it's quite amazing that we can get, 15, 20 college kids that chose to show up somewhere, show up anywhere really, on a Saturday morning at 8 a.m., let alone sit in silence for a while, for 4 hours. So I was thinking about that this morning, and we talk a lot about this practice and the practice of diligence within Buddhist teachings and working hard at whatever it is you do. And when it comes to meditation, Buddhist practice, spiritual path, yoga, whatever it is that brings you that kind of sense of peace and quiet and calm and stillness, it still requires a little bit of effort, and it still requires a little bit of work, a little bit of discipline, a little bit of diligence. And what we realize, I think many people over time, is that it is actually our lack of discipline or lack of diligence in certain areas of our lives that cause us to struggle quite a bit. We make decisions we make that harm others, or we make decisions we make that harm ourselves, or we make decisions that don't bring a sense of calm and peace to our immediate lives. That was, in essence, a lack of discipline or lack of diligence on the choices that we're making. And so when we begin this practice, for those who might be brand new or those who've been at this for 40 years, you know what I'm talking about, it takes a while. And part of being diligent and having the discipline to continue also requires patience. Patience with yourself as you go on this journey. So don't expect everything to just get fixed or healed in 3 months of meditation or Buddhist stuff. As I always say, it's a practice. It's a lifelong practice. And it takes a while. So, as we begin a meditation here in a few minutes, if your mind is going to wander to something, which it will, maybe allow it to wander to areas in your life where you lack discipline, you lack diligence, and how the lack of that in your life negatively impacts you or those around you. And as I always talk about, people come to meditation and do this kind of spiritual stuff because they want to feel good. They want to feel better, and that's wonderful. But in order to feel good and feel better, it's really important to stop and reflect very intimately inside and ask yourself, why am I not feeling so great? I think that's really a first step, is to be very, very honest with yourself and ask yourself those questions. So again, as your mind wanders, which it will, Don't worry about feeling so wonderful right now. Do some of the hard work, which requires to look at yourself honestly. Don't worry, nobody is listening to you while you're thinking, okay? So whatever your mind goes to, you are safe, all right? So we'll start with the meditation practice. A couple things to tell you before we begin. Nothing's going to happen to you. You're not going to float away. You're not going to have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. All right? Don't judge your practice, meaning don't ask yourself, is this working? Is this not working? Am I doing it right? Am I doing it wrong? We're just going to sit. We're going to breathe. You'll hear sounds inside the room, sounds outside the room. This is life. Life is filled with chaos. The practice of meditation is learning to get quiet and still within all of the chaos. Don't judge your practice. We judge ourselves all day long, what we look like, what we eat, what we wear. We're constantly in these judgment modes. And the practice of meditation is learning to go beyond judgment and just abide in sensation of breath. Posture, you just want to be comfortable. If you're on the cushions, often help slide into the front third, pushing the stomach forward, allows the shoulders to relax. Hands can be on the knees or in the lap, whatever's comfortable. If you're on the benches or chairs, also just trying to sit up straight, relaxing the shoulders. I'll guide us as we begin. We'll settle into a little bit of silence. If you need to move, simply move. Doesn't make you a bad meditator, just means your leg hurts. And starting with the eyes closed if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed. Start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And eventually, settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Gently guide the attention, focus, to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, expecting nothing but to sit and breathe. As the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it. Release that thought. Return attention, focus to the breath. Keeping the mind alert. Aware of each sound. Each thought. Each sensation. Yet concerned with nothing but sitting, breathing. Simply sitting, breathing. Learning to be comfortable in stillness, in quiet, wanting nothing but to sit and breathe. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds, and the mind learning to settle, know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. No one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. Once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. As you slowly open the eyes, slowly begin to move. Most important, with the practice of meditation, is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize whatever you feel now is quiet, calm, still. Or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment. There's nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how we sit and hold the hands across the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It's everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being, no different than anyone in this room, who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. What that means very simply for all of us in this room, regardless where you come from or what you believe in or where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen. You react. More stuff happens, more reactions. That's it. So all we're working on is closing the gap where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But when the mind is steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. This practice is not easy. It's not necessarily fun. It's not necessarily easy. It's challenging. But taking care of your mental, emotional health and well-being is the most important thing in your life. It's the foundation of everything you do. Family, friends, colleagues, strangers, those you love, those you don't know. Everything starts with your mind and your heart. And we spend so much of our days, regardless of what we do or where we are or who we're with, we spend so much of our days trying to fix things and change things and control things and getting others to do this and do that. It's just part of our lives. Think about how you spend your day, whether it's school or work, or we're constantly working on trying to get something to happen. It's how we spend our days. I'm not saying that's bad or wrong. I'm just pointing out that that's what we do. That's how we make things happen. And this practice of sitting is taking a few moments, whether it's 3 minutes or 20 minutes or however long you want to sit, and just allowing that part of us that is always working on something to rest. Because the brain needs it. It needs to settle. It needs to just sit. And while we sit, our mind still races. And when it races, we recognize it's racing and we work on bringing it back to the present moment. And we recognize it races again and we work on bringing it back to the present moment. And the more you cultivate and develop this tool and this skill and the ability to stay in the present moment, the easier it actually is to get everything done that we want to get done. Because when we're going through our days, we're not so scattered. Whenever we're doing something, we're just actually doing that. We're not worried about the outcome. We're not focused on 20 minutes in the future, 10 years in the future. We're just present with what we're doing. So every act, everything you do throughout your day becomes a meditative practice. That's where the expression in Buddhist teachings is say sitting, standing, walking, or lying down. Whatever you are doing, just be with that. That's the chop wood, carry water Zen expression. We've always had the day of silence for probably about 10 years now. And one year we did something downtown 6-7 years ago, and the flyer on top, it said chop wood, carry water. And Jim's laughing because you've heard this story. One of the college kids showed up wanting to know where the wood was that we were going to go chop. Right? It's just an expression. It means whatever you're doing, do it well. Be diligent at it, as I alluded to earlier at the start of this. And just focus on it. And we already know at this point of our lives and our journeys that so many things in your life will work out completely differently from how you ever expected or anticipated them to be. And once in a while, a few things actually work out how you want them to. It does happen. But a majority of our lives is just being present with it and learning to embrace things as they arise. And they will always arise differently than how we expect them to. And that's the beauty of this practice, is learning to be with things as they are. So I'll stop with that. As always, I prefer to just open up to questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with or pondering or would like to ask, and I'll do my best to confuse you more than you already are now. So thoughts, questions?
Yes. Initially, you started saying that during meditation, if your mind is, if you're, say you're not diligent and think about the consequences of that.
Yes.
But what happens is you never go back to concentrating on breathing or go back.
Yeah. I was only laughing when you started to ask a question because I've sat with you for long enough now. As soon as you said 3 words, I knew exactly where you were going. So you just sat there for 20 minutes thinking about all the things you're lazy about and not diligent with.
Right.
Right. How'd that make you feel?
Pretty miserable.
Pretty miserable. That's why, for someone like you, right? So I said at the beginning of this practice, when your mind wanders, at the beginning, allow it to wander to where you lack diligence or discipline so you can begin to learn from that. That's how I preface this meditation. And then 3 minutes into the meditation, I say, when your mind wanders, bring it back to the breath. Because I wanted to give you a little bit of a leeway, knowing that every person, including mine, our mind is going to wander. So if it's going to wander, let it wander to something productive. Not just like, yeah, what am I going to have for lunch? Although that's important too, right? But let it wander to something productive that you can learn from. Then the challenge is, once you kind of settle into that, to bring it back to the breath. So you can work on abandoning the train of thought. So your question is, what if you weren't able to do that? Then you weren't able to do that.
Okay.
There's your response. Keep trying. Understand that, I like to look at kind of benefits of any situation. And me setting up the meditation that way, allowing you to spend 20 minutes thinking about all the areas that you lack discipline, you lack diligence, it gave you something productive to focus on. If I hadn't set it up that way, then you would have, who knows where your mind would have been for 20 minutes. Either way, it probably wouldn't have been on the breath, right? The challenge now is to recognize that your mind is lost and to keep trying to come back to the present moment. Be disciplined and diligent with the effort to come back to the present moment. Try not to surrender, meaning I give up, I'm just going to wait for Jeff to hit the bell so I can then ask the question, what do I do when my mind wanders? Right? Yeah. Yeah, last thing I'll say, what's interesting, and trust me, you're not the only one in this room who sat there for longer than they probably should have, right? What's interesting is every other time you do a meditation practice and your mind wanders, you don't typically raise your hand and say, what if I couldn't bring my mind back? It's only because I gave you a specific task to do and you feel like you failed that you were concerned.
I thought of it.
You thought of that. Well, you had 20 minutes to think. So that in essence is the practice always. Try to come back, try to come back, try to come back. Because when we live our lives out there and we're starting to make a decision that we shouldn't make, or we're starting to do something we shouldn't do, or that's going to cause conflict to ourselves and others, right in that moment there's a gap that says, should I or should I not do this? And that's where we have to pull ourselves back. So simple in theory, yeah.
For me, the way you set it up today, I noticed more clearly that there are some thoughts that are a lot harder to just let go of than other ones.
Definitely.
It sort of brings focus into, okay, those are the things that I really need to work on letting go of.
Yeah, that's, again, and that's why, I set it up a little differently, just because from what I talked about at the opening and talking about diligence and discipline and where we lack, to me, it makes common sense that as we start to get quiet, that's where our mind is going to go. So I wanted to allow, make people feel comfortable allowing it to go there. And you can use that as a practice at home as well, right? Any of the things we always talk about, morality, we talk about patience, we talk about, cultivating compassion, we talk about greed. Sit sometimes at home for 5 or 10 minutes and say, you know what? I'm going to do a meditation on greed. And I'm going to sit for 5 minutes, and all I'm going to do is focus on areas of my life where I know I'm greedy, or areas of my life where I know I'm angry, or I know I'm whatever that emotion is. Focus on those things a little bit. It's important. And it is, like I said, usually more productive than just daydreaming. Yeah.
When you say you're going to meditate on greed or meditate on this, isn't meditation ultimately not thinking about things?
You're not supposed to listen to the stuff I say.
Doesn't mean I agree.
I know. That's why I love you so much. We've been doing this for years, right? Sometimes you listen, you never agree. It's a beautiful relationship we have. We still hug it out in the hall, So the last part of what you just said, isn't meditation supposed to be not thinking, right?
Well,
Go ahead.
ultimately bring the breath back. Come
Right.
back to that. And that's what you're thinking about, if anything. Because someone once told me, and it wasn't you, I said, if I'm doing a crossword puzzle, my mind goes. I'm doing the puzzle or solitaire. Meditation isn't thinking, it's almost non-thinking.
In theory, yes, right? There was a great Zen master, Dogen. He was the founder of what's called the Soto Zen School. He lived from 1200 to 1253. And one of the best books I ever read, it's called Beyond Thinking. And he would talk about when the body and mind, when your attachment to the body and mind fall away, you go beyond, you're left with just the breath. So in theory, yes, the practice is breathing in, know that you're breathing in, breathing out, know that you're breathing out, breathing in, know that you're breathing in, breathing out, know that you're breathing out. I'm just being realistic. And the fact that none of us spend 20 hours a day practicing meditation, none of us live in caves, none of us dedicate our entire life to a spiritual path for the most part. We are engaged in a billion things all day long. So to actually think that any one of us is going to sit here for 3 minutes and do nothing but focus on sensation of breath, I think is ridiculous. Our mind is going to wander. It is going to think. If somebody tells you, don't think, it's not going to work. You're not going to not think. I always say, your mind is always going to race. The problem is not the racing mind. The problem is what you do with the racing mind. And as Nirmal said, he recognized his racing mind, but he was unable to stop it. This is the challenge. And it's the challenge not just in meditation, but in our lives. Chances are when you're sitting there playing solitaire, you're doing a crossword puzzle and your mind wanders, might not be too much harm in that. But what happens when you're driving and somebody cuts you off and someone says something in the grocery store you don't like and someone really pushes your ego? You have a thought. And that thought and that ego and that pride gets challenged immediately. And you got a billion options, but two simple ones are fight back or come back to breath. And in most cases, when we come back to the breath for a split second, there was a guy years ago in prison, he said to me, if I just thought one more second before I did what I did, I wouldn't be spending my life in prison. And I've shared that every time I go in. And just about every inmate you talk to will tell you the same thing. So it's not, this might sound odd, I'm not concerned with our meditation practice. I'm not concerned with how good we meditate or how well our mind is trained on our breath when we meditate. I'm concerned with what we do out there. Nobody's harming anyone in here, right? And one way to practice is using the meditation practice focus on the breath. Another way to practice is when you're doing a crossword puzzle, just do the crossword puzzle. right? When you're playing solitaire, just play solitaire. When you're eating, just eat. When you're walking, just walk. But we tend to do 17 things at one time. And our minds are so scattered. And we think we're being so productive. And then we're exhausted. You know why? Because this thing is driving us crazy all day long. So, always happy to not answer your questions. Yes? Go ahead.
Just in daily life, I try and be aware. Okay, so this is a family issue. Something happens that doesn't seem right to me, and so I don't say anything. I think it's not my business. And then it keeps happening, and I keep saying it's not my business, until finally I have to say something about it, and then I feel like I created the problem, sort of. So I guess when you say return, remember, return to your breath, I practice that.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's a point where I say, someone's got to say something.
Well, okay, so let me just rephrase what you're saying. What you're asking about is when you have family problems, issues with people that you know and love, and you try to stay out of it. You keep saying, I'm going to stay out, I'm going to stay out, I'm going to stay out, and then you don't stay out. And then you say something, and then you don't get what you want, and then you feel you created a problem.
No, I got what I wanted.
Really?
Yeah, but I created the problem, but I'm the one who spoke out when other people would.
So here's the thing. Are there people out there, this is so tough with you, I know, but that's why I love doing this with you. Are there people out there who wish you would do things differently?
Oh, sure.
Sure. And when they tell you, do you always do things differently?
No, actually, I just had this experience. And
Okay.
I was aware of it.
You're aware. So people tell you things they want you to do differently, and you don't always do it. And sometimes they tell you to do things and you do. And sometimes you bother and annoy people. And sometimes they love you and want to give you a hug, right? You know who else does that? Every single person in this room. No offense to all of you enlightened people, right? As I always joke, someone else is sitting in a meditation class or therapy session somewhere talking about us, right? So this is the start, is to recognize that you can ask people to do all you want them to. This comes up a lot, especially in the recovery circle. Our recovery community here is huge. And when we see people that we know and love who are doing things that are harming themselves, and we want to reach out, we try to reach out, and we extend our hand and our heart, and we give all these things, people don't always listen. So I don't give specific advice ever. I give you general ideas that I have learned from Buddhist practice, which is that you have an idea and an expectation of how you think everybody should be. And every other person has an idea and expectation of how they think they should be. And the sooner we embrace that, that doesn't mean we stop trying to love and help and care for people, but they're going to do what they want to do. People ask a lot about, in relationships that aren't healthy. Buddhist practice doesn't mean you just sit there and allow yourself, to be, whether it's physical, mental, emotional, whatever it might be, to be the doormat and to go through abuse. Buddhist practice doesn't say, well, I'm just going to allow you to treat me this way. Buddhist practice, from my understanding, says, I'm going to recognize how someone is treating me. I'm going to understand that they're treating me this way because they are suffering, and I'm going to make a choice. Am I going to stay in this dynamic, or am I going to remove myself from this dynamic? But to spend your entire life trying to get other people to be how you want them to be doesn't work. So I'll never say, be quiet, as you said, or not be quiet. Recognize that when you're not quiet, you get what you have right now. And then you have to choose, am I okay with that? Like you said, you created the problem by speaking up. So you got what you created. This is our karma. Karma means action. Karma is not getting what you deserve. Karma is not what goes around comes around. Karma is what we give. The word karma means action. We generate action with body, speech, mind, what we think, what we say, and what we do. So you said something, and that speech created a situation. That situation is now a conflict. That's just how it is. Buddhist practice doesn't fix things. It makes you become very real and aware of what's happening and how important the words we use actually are, and how important the thoughts we have actually are, and how important the physical actions we bring into the world actually are. It makes us see things. It doesn't fix things. And a lot of people come into meditation or Buddhist practice looking to get fixed. That's why it's not so fun all the time. Because we have to own some of this conflict that we have. We have to own some of this conflict that we create. As much as we'd love to just push it off on others. Right? You could just blame everyone else. It'd be so simple. Yeah. So, good luck with that. Yeah.
As you're reflecting on the areas where you lack discipline, how do you find peace between accepting yourself as you are and feeling as though you need to take more responsibility?
That's a great question. So as you're reflecting on this practice and diligence, how do you find a balance between finding peace with where you're at and also having kind of the discipline and drive to keep working, right? I paraphrased what you said, but for our 1 million YouTube followers at home, I wanted to repeat your question. It's actually only 4, but that's all right. So there's a great Zen master, Shunryu Suzuki, and I say this quote a lot. He says, he would say to his students, you're all perfect exactly how you are, and you all could use a little improvement. He didn't come up to him and say, you suck, right? I've shared this teaching 1,000 times. And it's really important to understand that we're just human. We're all perfect and beautiful as we are. Other people tell us we're not. We tell ourselves are not more than anything. We listen and believe the other people who tell us we're not. Someone told us we were not okay 35 years ago, and you still think that way. Right? So for 35 years, you played in your head. I don't even think you're old enough to be 35 years ago, but you get my point, right? 35 years, we told ourselves or whatever that we are a certain way. We tell that story over and over and over again. You know what happens when we tell ourselves a story? We begin to believe it. And that sits in us. Everybody who tells us we're a certain way, they got their own mess. They have their own madness. They have their own struggles and challenges and drama. And trauma and difficulties. So the practice is to recognize you're here on a Saturday morning at 11 o'clock. You're doing the best you can with the life you've had. Have you done some good things to people over the years? Yes? Have you done some things that harm people over the years? So has everybody else in this world. Start with trying to tell yourself that you're not the story you've been telling yourself forever. You have incredibly wonderful, kind, gentle things about you. I don't even know you. I'm just guessing that you have those things, right? And then there's probably some areas that maybe you could use a little improvement. Again, you're here Saturday at 11 o'clock. So pat yourself on the back and say, I'm here. I'm working on this. But try not to be your toughest critic. Yeah, does that help? Yeah, another all the way in the back there.
It was so good. I'm glad I came today. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I usually try to be physical, not cognitive, when I sit to meditate. And of course, I get cognitive. So following your intention today, when you set the intention to be productive or think about what the discipline we need in our life, for some reason, what came to mind, and been coming to mind, and that's what I'm going to share. And it came in this way. God is in the waiting. And it could be any deity, but or wisdom or whatnot, but it works for me.
Mm-hmm.
It works for me because I'm a lot of times wrapped up. And it's in the waiting.
In the waiting?
That's right, in the waiting, right?
Waiting.
Waiting for things to happen,
Yeah.
being patient, that kind of thing. waiting is where it's at.
Yes.
And I think that this is what came up for me and I wanted to share.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Thank you. So just to kind of repeat what you said, that usually your meditation is very physical, but from how I prefaced it today, it was a little more cognitive and you started to think, and what kept coming to you was God is in the waiting, right? And how many of us like to wait for things? Nobody. We don't want to wait for things, right? I mean, they're instant. We just don't like to wait, most people. But personally, for me, one of the most beautiful things I've learned through this path and this practice is one of the paramitas is patience. And the 6 paramitas, I always talk about them, but the perfections as generosity, morality, patience, diligence, concentration, wisdom. 6 practices the Buddha taught that help us go from kind of struggle and discomfort and angst to kind of a peaceful, happy day, peaceful, happy life. And patience is key. Often, we lack patience the most with ourselves. I think that kind of ties into the earlier question, is that for some reason we expect ourselves to read like 1 Pema Chodron book and go to 3 meditations, and all of a sudden we think we're like, okay, I got it. You know, I'm just going to practice what I read on page 24 for the next 6 months and I'll be good. And then it doesn't work, and then we want to throw it away and try something else. Patience with yourself. And of course, patience with others. But learning to wait is something most people tend to struggle with a lot. In our entire culture, our society, our system, nothing is really set up. And that's part of what meditation practice is, I think, very useful for, is learning to just sit and wait. What are you waiting for? I don't know. It was a video years ago. I saw a little clip, and somebody was filming at some retreat center somewhere, and it was a Zen practice, and he was interviewing some of the people that were there, and he interviewed this one guy, and he said, they asked him, so you wake up at 3:30 in the morning? And the guy said, yeah, for meditation. They said, why do you get up at 3:30 in the morning? And he looked at him with a smile and started laughing and said, I have no idea. Right? And it was a complete surrender to what's happening. And I think when I hear God is in the waiting, and as you said, whatever, however you want to use the word God, for you it's God, and whatever and however you want to use that word, but learning to be patient and surrendering to what's happening is very crucial on this path and this practice. And when I say things like on this path and on this practice, what I'm really talking about is in your life. I'm not really concerned with how patient people are when they show up here. Again, the concern is how patient are you when you go outside? Because when we wrap up here in a few moments, nobody cares you finished your meditation. Nobody cares that you came from your little Buddhist place. Nobody cares how calm and quiet and peaceful you are right now. They want stuff from you. That's just how the world works. So learn to bring that patience and surrender and waiting. And see what happens. The last word I'll say, which ties into surrender and patience and waiting, is control. Anyone in here like to try to control people or places? I always love the laughter on people's faces when I say that, because it immediately tells me who loves to have control. When we learn to surrender and be patient and wait, we learn to surrender some idea of, it's an illusion also, of control that we think we have over things. Control is really tied into your question earlier as well. We want to control outcomes and situations. We want them to go exactly how we want them to. And unfortunately, people don't do what we want. The sooner we embrace that, the easier life is. And again, this is coming from a kid who spent his entire life trying to control everything and everyone and had zero patience. So it is possible. So I think we'll close on that. We'll join palms. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to those who need it most.